Welcome to Midnight Confessions, where true horror stories come alive. Subscribe for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your nights. Share in the comments where you're watching from. Let's start the story. In the suffocating darkness of rural Nebraska, where endless cornfields create walls of living shadow, something unspeakable happened that still makes my blood freeze. This is the night I discovered that evil doesn't always announce itself with dramatic flourishes. Sometimes it simply crawls into your bed and breathes beside you. My name is Michael, and what I'm about to tell you will haunt your dreams just as it has haunted mine for years. Growing up with my twin brother Jake in our isolated farmhouse, I thought I knew every creak, every shadow, every sound that belonged to our home. I was catastrophically wrong. We were fraternal twins, though people constantly confused us for identical. Jake possessed angular, predatory features, a razor-sharp jawline that could cut glass and obsidian black hair that defied gravity. Meanwhile, I carried softer edges, sandy hair that never cooperated, and perpetually exhausted eyes that seemed to see too much. Strangers would stare at us with uncomfortable intensity, whispering their stupid questions about twin telepathy and shared consciousness. The terrifying truth is that sharing a womb doesn't grant you supernatural powers, but it does create bonds that something malevolent can exploit. Our childhood prison was a cramped bedroom with ancient bunk beds that groaned like dying animals with every movement. While our house boasted 4 spacious bedrooms, our father, a cold, calculating attorney, had claimed the largest room as his sanctuary. Behind that locked door, he'd disappear for hours with his legal files, and Mother warned us never to disturb him because his work keeps us alive. Those words felt more ominous than protective, like we were living on borrowed time. So Jake and I remained trapped together, with me suffering on the top bunk while he claimed the bottom. Every night became a symphony of torment. His restless thrashing would shake the entire frame, metal springs shrieking like tortured souls, jolting me awake repeatedly. When nature called and I'd climb down in the suffocating darkness, my bare feet would accidentally brush his skin, and he'd curse me with venomous whispers. Sometimes I'd fantasize about having my own space, away from his oppressive presence. Yet deep down, a primal fear whispered that being alone might invite something far worse. By 15, our lives had crystallized into disturbing patterns. Jake was the golden child, charismatic, popular, surrounded by admirers and teachers who saw only his carefully crafted mask. I existed in his shadow, a bookworm who found comfort in solitude and the glowing screen of my Android phone, where I'd lose myself in retro video games until dawn. Their pixelated worlds felt safer than reality. That summer arrived like a fever dream, bringing heat so oppressive it felt alive, crawling through our walls and settling into our bones. The air grew thick and poisonous, turning nights into sweltering nightmares. Jake would strip down and kick off his covers, his pale skin gleaming with sweat as he muttered angry prayers to the useless ceiling fan. I'd lie rigid above him, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, wondering why it sometimes sounded wrong. Then came the night that shattered everything I believed about reality. Jake had retired unusually early, abandoning his typical ritual of late-night texting and social media scrolling. When I climbed to my bunk around midnight, his form lay motionless beneath the sheet, breathing with mechanical precision, too steady, too controlled for natural sleep. Something primitive in my brain screamed warnings, but I ignored it. I retrieved my phone and loaded Dragon Warrior, the screen's sickly glow creating dancing shadows on the ceiling like spirits trying to escape. The repetitive combat felt therapeutic, each defeated slime a small victory against the crushing anxiety that lived in my chest. But after an hour, my bladder demanded attention. Sighing in defeat, I swung my legs over the edge and began my descent. My toes grazed the thing beneath the covers, and it stirred with an inhuman fluidity that made my skin crawl. "Sorry," I whispered to the darkness. The response was a wet, sliding sound as it repositioned itself, not the normal rustle of fabric, but something organic and disturbing. The bathroom light felt like salvation, harsh fluorescence banishing the shadows that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. But as I relieved myself, an overwhelming sensation of being watched made my spine tingle with dread. The house held its breath around me, even the refrigerator's hum falling silent. Returning to our room, I cracked the door slowly. Hallway light spilled across the floor like spilled blood, and the thing in Jake's bed released a guttural moan that definitely didn't sound human. My hands trembled as I shut the door and climbed back up, every instinct screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. That's when my phone's notification light began pulsing like a digital heartbeat. A message. At this ungodly hour, it could only mean trouble. The sender's name made my blood turn to ice. Jake. "Hey bro, staying out late with Emma tonight. Cover for me if Dad asks, okay?" My vision blurred as terror consumed my rational thoughts. I stared at the message until the letters seemed to writhe like living things. With shaking fingers, I typed back. "Stop playing games. You're literally sleeping right below me." The response came instantly, as if something had been waiting. "I'm not home. I'm at Emma's house right now. Why would I lie about this?" My heart hammered so violently, I thought it might explode. I peered over the edge of my bunk at the shape below. It was breathing, slow, deliberate inhalations that sounded like wind through a graveyard. But the chest movements looked wrong, too exaggerated, like something mimicking human respiration without understanding it. "I can literally see you breathing. This isn't funny anymore." The reply came so fast it felt supernatural. "Michael, I swear on Mom's grave, I'm not in that room. If something is pretending to be me, get out right now." The world tilted sideways. Every hair on my body stood at attention as pure, animalistic terror flooded my nervous system. The thing below me was still breathing, in out, but now I noticed the rhythm was slightly off, like a recording playing at the wrong speed. My body moved without conscious thought, launching itself from the top bunk in a desperate leap. I crashed to the floor with a thunderous impact that should have woken the dead, but the breathing below never faltered. My trembling hand found the doorknob as every survival instinct in my DNA screamed a single word: run. But as I yanked the door open, something that sounded exactly like Jake's voice whispered from the darkness behind me. "Where are you going, brother? Don't you want to stay and play?" I never looked back. And to this day, I still don't know what was wearing my brother's face that night, or if it's still out there, waiting for another family to infiltrate, another trust to betray. Some doors should never be opened. Some beds should never be slept in. And some twins should never be left alone in the dark. Let's start the second story. What would you do if you discovered something inhuman had been sleeping in your house, watching you, breathing next to you every single night? This is my story, and I promise you'll never sleep the same way again. I had to turn around. Something felt wrong, terrifyingly wrong. I flipped the switch, flooding the room with harsh yellow light. The lower bunk lay completely vacant. No brother, no rising chest beneath blankets, just a terrifying impression where something had been lying moments earlier. I stumbled forward on trembling legs, ripping away the bedding with shaking hands. Absolutely nothing. My pulse thundered in my ears like a war drum. Dropping to my knees, I forced myself to peer into the darkness beneath the bed frame. Empty blackness stared back at me. The closet door hung slightly ajar. I yanked it wide. Nothing but hanging clothes that seemed to sway without any breeze. Behind the bedroom door, in every corner, every shadow, completely barren. Yet every fiber of my being screamed that something had been watching me from that bed. I sprinted down the corridor, my bare feet slapping against cold hardwood, and hammered against my parents' bedroom door like my life depended on it. "Joseph, what in God's name?" Dad's voice emerged thick with sleep, then sharpened with alarm. Something was in our room," I gasped, my words tumbling over each other. "But Joe texted me, he's not here." I saw it breathing in his bed. The transformation in Dad's expression was instantaneous and bone-chilling. He leaped from bed, throwing on his robe, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Margaret, stay put. Call 911 if I give the signal." We conducted a methodical search of every inch of our home. Dad gripped an aluminum baseball bat with white knuckles while I followed, my heart attempting to claw its way out of my chest. Every closet became a potential tomb, every bathroom a hiding place for nightmares. The basement's shadows seemed alive, the garage held secrets in every corner. Nothing. No shattered locks, no forced windows, no evidence of intrusion. By the time we finished our terrifying investigation, cold sweat had soaked through my pajamas. Mom wrapped trembling arms around my shoulders. "Sweetheart, perhaps you were having a vivid nightmare." "No." My voice shattered the silence. "I swear on everything holy, I wasn't dreaming." 60 minutes later, our front door creaked open with a sound that made us all freeze. Joe entered, reeking of Emma's flowery perfume, his shirt disheveled from hours in her back seat. "Why does everyone look like they've seen a ghost?" he asked, scanning our pale faces. Dad's stare could have melted steel. "Your brother claims you weren't home tonight, yet he also insists something was occupying your bed. Explain that impossibility." Joe's brow furrowed deeply. "I told him I was at Emma's place. I've been there since 6. My throat constricted until I could barely whisper, "Then what unholy thing was breathing in your bed?" The silence that followed was deafening. That night, I positioned myself on our living room sofa, staring at the television's black screen while my family returned to their beds. Joe climbed the stairs, puzzled but unaffected by the terror that had seized my soul. I refused to close my eyes until sunrise painted the windows. Years have passed, yet the memory has only intensified, becoming more vivid and horrifying with time. I still hear that rhythmic, deliberate breathing whenever I wake in complete darkness. I still visualize that unmistakable human shape beneath the covers, rising and falling with each breath. When I visit my childhood home now as a grown man, I stand frozen in the doorway of our former bedroom, feeling that same Arctic dread creeping through my veins. The bunk beds have vanished, replaced by an innocent guest bed. But I cannot escape the conviction that if I extinguish the lights and listen carefully, I would hear the soft rustle of something shifting beneath invisible sheets. Most terrifying of all, sometimes in my own apartment, hundreds of miles away, I wake to the unmistakable sound of breathing in my room. Slow, measured, hauntingly familiar, even though no one else lives there. Let's start the third story. I never imagined a single night could shatter my understanding of reality, but that's precisely what occurred. My name is Nathan Cole, and during this nightmarish experience, I was 15 years old. My younger sister, Lily, was 10. We resided in a deceptively peaceful neighborhood on Brookhaven, Massachusetts' outskirts. The type of community where residents never lock their doors, believing evil only strikes distant places. They're wrong. Evil can manifest anywhere. Our home was a humble two-story colonial, white vinyl siding adorned with navy shutters, nestled at a cul-de-sac's end. My father, Richard Cole, labored in construction, frequently arriving home after dark, caked in concrete dust and exhaustion. My mother, Elaine, taught high school English, the sort who corrected everyone's grammar during family dinners. Lily was my complete opposite in every conceivable way. While I embodied sarcasm, impatience, and devotion to my guitar and gaming, she remained gentle, imaginative, and believed in entities I had abandoned long ago. Monsters lurking in shadows, spirits wandering hallways, mystical creatures hiding in plain sight. Her creativity knew no boundaries. She spent countless hours sketching fairy tale characters or describing the dark figures she claimed inhabited her closet. I typically mocked her beliefs, but secretly recognized her supernatural sensitivity that I lacked. That cursed Saturday in January 2019, my parents received an invitation to a colleague's silver anniversary celebration in Providence, Rhode Island. The event promised to continue well past midnight, so they warned us not to expect their return before 3 a.m. Before departing, Mom delivered her predictable lecture in our kitchen. "Nathan, tonight you're responsible for everything. No sugary snacks past 11 o'clock. Lily must be asleep by 10 sharp. And absolutely forbid her from watching those action movies. She'll be hyperactive until dawn." I grinned confidently. "Don't worry, Mom. Everything's under control." Dad placed his calloused hand on my shoulder, his eyes serious. "Keep every door locked tight. You have our phone numbers for emergencies." "We'll be perfectly fine," I assured them. Little did I know, that night would change our lives forever. Let's start the story. After my parents vanished into the darkness outside, our home transformed into something sinister. The walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural quiet, as if the house itself was holding its breath. My younger sister Emma begged to watch superhero movies in our living room, and I foolishly agreed, making snacks while she wrapped herself in what would become her last moments of innocence. For those fleeting hours, we existed in blissful ignorance. We debated fictional heroes while real monsters lurked in the shadows, completely unaware that evil had already chosen us as its prey. When the final scene faded to black, midnight had crept upon us like a predator. Emma's eyelids grew heavy with exhaustion. "Time for bed," I announced, though my voice carried an ominous weight I didn't yet understand. She whined for more screen time, but I enforced our mother's sacred rules. Teeth cleaned, then straight to her room. She trudged upstairs with the reluctance of someone walking toward their doom. I remained below, switching to a violent thriller, something far too dark for innocent eyes. When the credits finally rolled, my phone's glowing screen revealed the cursed hour, 2:04 a.m. As I stretched and began clearing our mess, the sound of bare feet on wooden steps made my blood freeze. Emma stood on the staircase, her face drained of all color, looking like a ghost of herself. "Why aren't you sleeping?" I whispered, though something in her expression made my throat constrict. She remained silent, her tiny fingers clawing at her nightgown. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of pure terror. There's something living in my closet." Initially, I dismissed it as childhood imagination running wild. But Emma had never been one for elaborate lies or midnight pranks. The tremor in her voice suggested something far more sinister. "Emma," I sighed, attempting to mask my growing unease, "you're probably hearing the wind making the house groan. It's been howling all evening." Tears began streaming down her pale cheeks. "No." I witnessed it with my own eyes. A man was standing inside my closet. He whispered that he wanted to do terrible things to me. The way those words escaped her lips, flat, traumatized, absolutely convinced, turned my blood to ice water. My first reaction was desperate denial. That's not amusing. Don't create stories like that. I'm not creating anything, Nathan. She hissed, her small knuckles white against the banister. He was enormous with midnight black hair. He kept grinning at me with the most horrible smile. Something in her tone, deadly serious, shaking with authentic fear, made my intestines twist into knots of dread. Fine, I muttered, trying to project courage I absolutely didn't possess. Let's investigate together. We ascended those stairs like condemned prisoners walking to execution. The corridor stretched before us in suffocating darkness, broken only by the sickly glow of Emma's nightlight. My heart hammered against my ribcage like something desperate to escape. I kept reassuring myself we'd discover nothing, perhaps a misplaced garment casting twisted shadows. Upon reaching her sanctuary, I triggered the light switch. Her bedroom materialized before us. Rose-colored drapes, miniature bookcase, plush toys scattered like abandoned casualties. Everything appeared normal except for that ominous closet door sealed tight against the far wall. I approached with the slow deliberation of someone approaching their own grave. Emma pressed herself against the doorframe, clutching it like a lifeline. See? I forced a smirk that felt like plastic on my face. Absolutely nothing lurking here. I seized the handle and ripped the door wide open. What materialized before my eyes shattered my understanding of reality forever. Crouched within that small space, folded like a spider beneath the top shelf, was a human nightmare. He towered at least 6 feet, with greasy obsidian hair cascading past his shoulders like oil. His face was skeletal, skin the color of corpse flesh, with coarse stubble covering his hollow jaw. His eyes were enormous, unblinking, boring into my soul. He appeared middle-aged, weathered, built like someone who'd spent years doing unspeakable things in darkness. And he was smiling. A smile that belonged in hell, not in a child's bedroom. For an eternal second, I became paralyzed. My brain refused to process this abomination. Monsters weren't supposed to manifest in reality. Strangers didn't simply materialize inside secured homes like demons summoned from nightmares. Then volcanic rage erupted within me. This creature had been watching my sister sleep. He'd whispered unspeakable desires to her innocent ears. I didn't think. I attacked. My fist connected with his windpipe like a sledgehammer. He choked, stumbling forward like a wounded animal. I drove him backwards into the wall, adrenaline screaming through my veins like liquid fire. "Run, Emma!" I roared. She fled, her screams echoing through the house like banshee wails. The creature gasped, clutching his throat, but possessed unholy strength. He swung wildly, his claws grazing my jaw. Agony exploded across my face. I drove my heel into his shin, then buried my knee deep into his gut. He crumpled, wheezing like a dying animal. I didn't stop. Fury consumed my humanity. I kicked his face repeatedly, again and again, until crimson painted the carpet like abstract art. His nose cracked at impossible angles, his breathing became ragged death rattles. But something about this abomination terrified me more than the violence itself. He wasn't defending himself like any normal person would. He just kept grinning through the blood, his eyes locked on mine like I was entertainment, like this was all some twisted game to him. I retreated, heart exploding, then pursued Emma. She'd barricaded herself inside the upstairs bathroom, sobbing like her soul was being torn apart. I hammered on the door. "It's me. Let me inside." She cracked it open just enough for me to slip through, and I slammed it shut behind me. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I dialed emergency services. The operator answered on the first ring. "There's a monster in our house." I gasped. He was hiding in my sister's closet. He tried to. "Please, you must send help immediately." They promised police were racing toward us. I called my parents next, choking out the nightmare through tears. Mother screamed into the phone, swearing they were speeding home immediately. We huddled on that cold bathroom floor in suffocating silence, listening to the house breathe around us. For several minutes, nothing. Then subtle sounds began, the groan of floorboards, deliberate footsteps stalking through the hall. Emma buried her face against my chest. I held her with desperate strength, praying that flimsy lock would protect us from whatever was hunting us. 10 minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights painted our bathroom window like salvation. Police stormed through our home like an army. An officer escorted us downstairs to safety. I was shaking so violently I could barely form words as I described the creature in precise detail. Middle-aged, towering, greasy obsidian hair, corpse pale, powerfully built. They searched Emma's room with military precision. The closet, the hallway, the basement, every corner of our violated home. He had vanished like smoke. Not a single window damaged, no evidence of forced entry, just a smear of blood on Emma's carpet where I'd wounded the beast. "Are you absolutely certain you witnessed someone?" one officer inquired gently.
I exploded.
"I didn't hallucinate this nightmare."
He was there. I drew his blood.
"It's staining the floor." They exchanged meaningful glances but didn't challenge me. One officer maintained vigil outside until sunrise painted the sky. 7 days crawled by. I barely slept. Emma refused to approach her room, sharing mine instead. Every sound the house made sent us into panic.
Then the call arrived.
Police informed my parents they'd captured a man in Danbury, hiding inside an abandoned shed like a rat. His name was Gerald Pike, 46 years old, a drifter with an extensive history of trespassing, burglary, and endangering children. He matched my description with terrifying accuracy. He'd been violating homes for months, sneaking into children's bedrooms like a demon feeding on innocence. If Emma hadn't seen him, if I hadn't opened that closet door, the thought still makes me physically ill. Months have passed, but I cannot walk past Emma's room without visualizing that smile lurking in the darkness. I keep wondering how many nights he might have been there, watching her sleep, planning unspeakable acts without our knowledge.
Emma has changed.
She no longer speaks of fairy tales or imaginary creatures. She keeps her closet door nailed shut permanently. As for me, sleep remains elusive because sometimes in the suffocating silence of 3 a.m., I swear I hear the creak of floorboards, and I wonder if perhaps Gerald Pike wasn't working alone. What would you have done if you found a stranger hiding in your child's closet? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more true horror stories that will keep you awake at night.
Let's start the story.
I never imagined my teenage years would feel less like freedom and more like a responsibility I never asked for. While other kids my age were stressing over tests, sports, or after-school jobs, my high school days were swallowed by something heavier: raising my little sister. There's a 12-year gap between us. When I was 17, she was just 3, tiny curls bouncing around her face, big eyes that seemed too bright for this world, and an energy that never ran out. Her name was Leia, and she became my shadow. My parents, Daniel and Marissa, worked punishing shifts at Brookhaven General, my dad in respiratory therapy, my mom running the chaos of the ER. Their schedules collided more than they aligned, and that meant Leia was mine every afternoon.
And I didn't resent it.
If anything, she softened me. She could barely say my name. Ethan became Effin, and every time she said it, it melted the part of me that thought I hated babysitting. After daycare, she would sprint toward me, crashing into my legs, sticky hands clutching half-smeared drawings, spilling her day in endless rambles while I pretended my life was just as exciting. The daycare wasn't some sterile building. It was an old Victorian house at the edge of town, run by Harold and Evelyn Whitford, an older couple pushing into their late 60s. Evelyn always smelled faintly of lavender, her silver hair twisted into a bun. Harold barely spoke, but when he did, his voice carried something heavier. Their house was painted in cheerful pastels, children's drawings covering the walls, shelves stuffed with stuffed animals, and the backyard filled with old swings and rusting toys that still managed to spark joy. Every day at 3:15, I'd pull up in our beat-up Honda Civic, step inside, and find Leia waiting. Evelyn would hand me her tiny backpack with a gentle smile. She painted again today, lots of blue. Said it was the sky, or she played house with Emma. Such a little caretaker. The days blurred into a rhythm, until one Tuesday in October. That day, I walked in and saw Leia kneeling beside the dollhouse. Her small fingers carefully lined up tiny figurines in front of her. She looked up, her face lighting like it always did, and she rushed toward me, almost knocking me over. Evelyn, rocking gently in her chair, gave me her usual warm smile. "She had another good day," she said softly. "She's been spending a lot of time on the swings." "That's good," I replied, taking the backpack. Evelyn's voice lowered. "She's been talking about a new friend.
A boy."
Before I could ask more, Leia tugged at my hand, eager to leave. In the car, I buckled her into her seat. "So, Bug, who's this new friend?"
"His name's Owen," she chirped. I frowned. I'd heard about Emma, Nora, and Finn before, but never Owen. "What's he like?"
"He pushes me on the swing really high. And he likes juice boxes."
She giggled.
I half smiled, but my mind was already drifting toward the mountain of calculus homework waiting at home. That night, while eating dinner, my mom asked how daycare went.
"Good," I said.
"She played with some kid named Owen." My mom froze, fork suspended in the air.
Who?
Owen, I repeated casually.
Her brow furrowed.
Ethan, I've met almost every child there. There is no Owen.
I shrugged it off.
Maybe he's new. But the way her voice cracked sent something sharp crawling down my spine.
Days passed. Weeks.
Owen kept appearing in Leia's chatter. She drew him with crayons, a blonde boy with a crooked smile, always beside her. She'd laugh like he was sitting right next to her in the back seat. One afternoon, I came home from school to find her hunched over paper, unusually quiet. "What are you working on, Bug?" She tilted the page toward me.
My stomach turned.
It was her, unmistakably in her polka dot dress, standing next to a boy with short blonde hair.
But he wasn't standing.
He was face down in a pool of water, blue scribbles surrounding him, black X's over his eyes.
Leia, my voice faltered.
"What's this supposed to be?" "That's me and Owen," she said flatly. My mouth went dry. "Why is he in the water?" She met my eyes, expression disturbingly calm. "He's dead." I tried to laugh it off. "That's not funny, Bug. You don't draw your friends like that." "He doesn't mind," she said, and went back to coloring. I stood there, frozen, my skin crawling, the picture burned into my mind. A few nights later, while making chili, my parents texted they'd be late. I set a bowl out for Leia and called upstairs. "Dinner's ready."
No answer. Leia. I called again. Nothing.
With a sigh, I climbed the stairs.
Her bedroom door was cracked.
Inside, I heard her whispering. "Why can't I tell Ethan?"
"Oh, okay. I won't." She giggled. "You're silly, Owen." My throat closed.
I pushed the door open further. She sat cross-legged on the floor, facing the corner. Her toy swing, the one Harold had hung from the ceiling, swayed slowly. But she wasn't near it.
"Leia."
My voice shook. She startled, turning quickly, her cheeks flushed. "Effin, you scared me." "Who were you talking to?"
Her lip quivered. "Owen."
"There's no one here," I said firmly, eyes darting to the swinging seat.
She shook her head hard.
"Yes, there is. He told me not to tell you, but he's here. He's always here." Her words chilled me deeper than the autumn wind slipping through her cracked window. That night, I told my parents everything. Showed them the drawing. My dad brushed it off as imagination, but my mom's face drained of color. She promised to talk to Evelyn and Harold. The next day, I picked Leia up but lingered instead of rushing out. Evelyn was stacking blocks, Harold arranging nap mats. My heart hammered as I asked, "Has Leia ever talked about someone named Owen while she's here?" Both of them froze. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. Harold's shoulders sagged, his voice breaking as he finally spoke. His voice came out rough, like gravel scraping against stone. "What did she tell you?" I swallowed, my throat dry.
That she plays with him.
That he's her friend. Evelyn's eyes shimmered with tears, her body trembling as she dropped into the rocking chair with a dull thud. Our son's name was Owen. The air in the room shifted, colder, heavier. My stomach twisted as Harold lowered his gaze to the floor. "He drowned," he whispered, his voice breaking, "in the backyard pool, 21 years ago." My skin prickled, a sharp, icy rush as though unseen fingers had just dragged across my spine. That night, my parents didn't hesitate. They called Father Brennan from St. Mary's Parish. He arrived 2 days later, armed with holy water and trembling prayers. The ceremony filled every corner of the house, yet something about the silence afterward felt unfinished, incomplete. Leia had been restless throughout the blessing, her small hands twitching, whispering under her breath to someone I couldn't see. She shifted like a puppet with strings pulled by invisible hands. But after Father Brennan left, she never spoke Owen's name again. Her crayons, once stained with drawings of dark shadows and lonely swings, began to paint rainbows and dogs. The swing in her bedroom, her favorite, sat motionless. But at night, I would still hear her soft voice drifting through the walls.
Talking. Whispering.
Once, leaning close, I heard words that iced my blood. "I'll see you at the swings." Years slid by, but the memory never left me. Leia grew older, 13 now, sharp-tongued and full of teenage rebellion, pretending she remembered nothing of her haunted childhood. But I remembered.
Every detail.
Evelyn's broken sobs. Harold's voice cracking as he relived his son's death. The sight of that backyard swing, swaying when no wind stirred. Even now, whenever I pass that decaying Victorian house on the edge of Brookhaven, my stomach knots. The playground still stands there, rotted but upright, creaking with age. And sometimes, when the evening sun fades and the shadows stretch long across the yard, if you slow your car enough, you'll see him.
A small blond boy. Sitting. Waiting.
His thin legs dangling as he sways gently, as though expecting someone, anyone, to push him higher. I never thought a harmless shopping trip with my little sister would dredge up memories of terror I tried to bury. But that day changed everything. I was 17, barely an adult, old enough to drive, old enough to babysit, but still young enough to fear what I couldn't understand. My sister Isla was just 5 then. A tiny bundle of chatter and energy who followed me everywhere like a shadow stitched to my heels. My mother used to laugh and say, "She's your echo. She'll never let you out of her sight." Our parents worked long hours. Mom was a nurse, sometimes gone until the black hours of the night. Dad drove endless delivery routes, gone for days. That left me and Isla. And even when she got on my nerves, I didn't mind. I was her shield, and she trusted me more than anyone. That Saturday, my mom slipped me $40 and told me to take Isla shopping for school clothes. The plan was simple: drive to Westfield Market Center, grab a couple outfits, and come straight home. The sky hung heavy with clouds, the kind of day that hinted at rain but never delivered. Isla skipped beside me in her sparkly sneakers, tugging on my sleeve.
"Can I get a dress?"
"One that spins when I twirl." I smirked, ruffling her hair.
"We'll see.
"But don't push it. Mom gave me 40, not 400. She pouted, sticking out her tongue, but her excitement bounced off her in waves. We arrived at the store, falling into our routine: toy aisle first, clothes next, and candy if she begged hard enough. But first, the little coffee shop tucked inside. I ordered my cold brew, got her a cake pop. While waiting, I leaned against the wall, scrolling my phone. That's when I noticed him.
A man. Alone.
He sat hunched in the corner, dressed head to toe in black, hoodie jeans, cap pulled low.
No drink. No bag. No laptop. Just stillness.
Watching nothing, or maybe watching everything.
I brushed it off.
People hang around stores all the time. But something in his posture wasn't casual.
It was sharp. Alert. Predatory.
"Lucas," Isla tugged my arm, "is my cake pop ready?"
I forced a smile. Almost.
When they called our order, I grabbed her hand. For reasons I couldn't explain, I didn't walk past him. Instead, I steered us down a side aisle, lying, "This way's quicker." The children's section exploded with color and fabric. Isla darted toward racks of pink sweaters, holding them up to her chin.
"This one."
"Oh, and this one too." I laughed weakly, pretending to weigh them. "Try them on, we'll see." And that's when the air shifted. Through the gaps between the clothes, I saw him. The man from the cafe. Standing only a few feet away, eyes locked on us. The instant I met his gaze, he turned, pretending to browse. My chest tightened, my throat closing in panic. I wanted to grab Isla and run, but fear of spooking her kept me calm.
"Come on," I whispered.
"Let's try these on." The fitting rooms were silent, the hallway narrow. I shoved Isla into a stall, my voice trembling as I told her to change. She twirled in the mirror, giggling, oblivious.
"Look. It spins."
"Looks great," I muttered, my ears straining. When we stepped out, my blood froze.
He was there.
Sitting directly across the entrance, on the bench.
Waiting. Watching. My pulse thundered. We hurried past, trying not to run. I led Isla into the beauty section, pretending to shop while my mind raced. She touched face masks with innocent fingers, humming softly. And that's when I caught him again, lurking at the end of the aisle, phone in hand. But the angle, it was wrong. Tilted. Aimed toward us. My chest seized.
I bent low to Isla, whispering urgently.
"Stay close to me. Don't wander. Hold my hand." Her eyes widened. "Why? What's wrong?" "Nothing," I lied, my voice tight. "Just stay close." We headed for the front. I quickened my steps, my ears burning with the sound of our own breathing. But every time I dared glance back, he was still there. Following. Never too close. Never too far. Always just enough. At the checkout counter, I leaned forward, lowering my voice so only the cashier could hear. "Listen. I think that man has been following us. Can someone walk us to our car?" The cashier's smile drained instantly. Her gaze flicked past me, and her face turned pale, as if she too had seen the figure I feared. Without a word, she lifted the phone and paged for security. Within moments, a guard appeared, a tall, broad man in a navy uniform, his expression grave.
"I'll walk you out," he said firmly, leaving no room for hesitation. Isla's hand gripped mine like a vice. Her silence told me everything. She felt the same dread crawling beneath her skin.
We stepped outside.
The air was heavy, suffocating. There he was, the man in black, lurking by the doors, his presence oozing menace. The second his eyes locked on the guard, his demeanor snapped. He turned sharply, bolting across the lot toward a dark van parked at the farthest corner. The engine growled to life, and the van screeched out of the parking lot before we even reached our car. The guard didn't move until we were locked inside. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed unease. "You kids did the right thing," he said flatly. Driving away, my hands trembled against the wheel. In the back seat, Isla hugged her dress still wrapped in its plastic, her face pressed against the cold glass. "Lucas," her whisper cracked through the silence. "Yeah. Why was that man watching us?"
I swallowed hard.
"I don't know, but he's gone now."
The truth?
I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know what would have happened if I hadn't trusted my gut, if the cashier hadn't believed me, if the guard hadn't been there. That thought claws at me even now. Some horrors never reveal themselves, but they leave scars you never outrun. Always trust your instincts. They may be the only thing keeping you alive. I never imagined the most ordinary morning could spiral into something that still stalks me in the dark. Back then, I was 24, still living at home in the deceptively quiet town of Fairview. Nestled in a valley, it seemed too calm to hide anything sinister. My twin brother Harper and I had a ritual. Every morning at 7 sharp we ran. It wasn't just fitness. It was survival in its own strange way, a challenge that tethered us together. Our loop stretched beyond the suburbs, splitting us in opposite directions until we collided again in the middle of town. A silent race, one of us left, the other right, always testing who'd make it back first. That spring morning burned itself into my memory. The air was sharp, almost icy, more sobering than any coffee. Harper tugged at his shoelaces in the kitchen while I filled a bottle with water.
"You're going down today," I teased.
"You've been saying that all week." His grin was sharp, the kind only a twin could give, a grin that felt both brotherly and defiant. Upstairs, our parents slept. Dad would be awake soon for work, but Mom, exhausted from another hospital night shift, wouldn't stir until late morning.
The world felt safe. Normal. Predictable. We stepped into the driveway. Stretched. Exchanged one last look. And without a word more, we split apart, me left, Harper right. The city was waking up. But what waited for us in its shadows had already been awake far longer. The distant hum of cars rolled down Main Street, blending with the rhythmic hiss of sprinklers across empty lawns. Birds scattered from telephone wires as if they sensed something I didn't. My running path curved along the town's edge, past a stretch of decaying apartment buildings hidden behind thick hedges and crooked trees. I'd always felt uneasy there, not because of crime, but because those buildings looked abandoned by life itself. Faded walls, cracked balconies, blinds dangling loose, as if people only drifted there when they had nowhere left to go. That morning, as my sneakers pounded the pavement, I caught movement from the corner of my eye. Between the trees, cloaked in shadow, a figure stood completely still. A woman. Her pale face was expressionless, her hollow eyes locked directly on me. My stomach tightened like a vice. I forced myself not to turn my head fully, telling myself she was just a tenant out for air. But her unnatural stillness, her unwavering stare, carved a shiver deep into my skin. I picked up my pace. 10 minutes later, I crossed paths with Harper. We always slapped hands when we passed. He grinned, breathless, alive and strong. That image would burn into me forever, because it was the last time I saw him as he was. When I got home, Harper wasn't there. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he stayed out to cool down. I showered, ate, and waited. But when an hour passed, unease began to crawl up my spine. I called him. My hands trembled as the line clicked. "Yeah, I'm on my way back," his voice cracked with strain. "I need to tell you and Mom and Dad something." "What's going on?" I pressed. "I'll explain when I get home." His silence was heavier than words. When Harper finally walked through the door, his face was ashen, his eyes wide with terror. "What happened?" I demanded. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. "On Main Street, by those apartments. I saw her. Henry, I saw a woman hanging from the trees. Dead. Right there." He faltered, his voice breaking. "Some guy, her husband I think, ran out screaming. He cut her down, tried CPR. But she was gone." My blood froze. The memory stabbed me, the woman's eyes, staring into me earlier. I whispered, "Harper." I think I saw her too. But she wasn't hanging. She was standing, watching me. His face twisted. "That's impossible." "She was already." He stopped, shaking his head violently. "Don't." The police later ruled it a suicide. The husband was broken, inconsolable. No foul play suspected. Case closed. But not for us. I couldn't stop replaying her dead stare, the way it seemed to plead with me. Harper couldn't stop replaying the husband's reaction, the strange timing, how he appeared the exact second she was seen. Our morning runs ended. Harper stopped sleeping. He withdrew, hollowed out by something unseen. When I tried to reach him, he snapped. One night, his voice cracked in rage. "I wish I'd never gone that way. I wish I hadn't seen her." I didn't realize then how deeply those words cut. 3 months later, I found him lifeless in his room. He had followed the woman's path. Grief is a parasite. It gnaws from the inside, feeding on guilt. I blamed myself. If I had looked fully, if I had done something, maybe Harper would still be here. Desperate for answers, I turned to the internet. I found a forum for twins grieving loss. For the first time, I wasn't alone. There, I connected with someone calling herself Lena, from Montana. She said she'd lost her twin the same way. We bonded instantly. Every night we messaged, sharing secrets I'd never dared say aloud. My hidden anger at Harper, my belief he'd abandoned us, thoughts twisted by grief and shame. She comforted me, said she understood. Until the morning, everything shattered. I woke to find my private confessions blasted across the forum. My name, address, phone number, all exposed. Hate messages flooded in. Threats filled my inbox. Heart pounding, I confronted Lena. Her reply still sickens me. "You don't remember me, Henry. I was Harper's ex. Your family barred me from his funeral. You called me poison. You blamed me. I told you I'd make you pay. And I have." Everything snapped into place. Her fake story, her push to extract secrets, her obsessive closeness. She had known who I was all along. The harassment escalated. Rocks smashed our windows. My phone buzzed day and night with threats. "You killed him. You're next." My family lived in fear. I changed numbers, moved cities, tried to start over. But even now, years later, I wake in the night certain I hear Harper's voice calling. Sometimes I catch a pale figure in the corner of my vision, the same woman on Main Street, still staring. Harper. Lena. The dead woman. They blur together now, sewn into a curse that started the moment I didn't turn my head. And I can't stop wondering, if I had looked fully that morning, would anything have changed? Or was the end already written? Even after moving cities, starting fresh, and trying to bury the memories, I could never escape. Some nights, I would hear faint footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, when I lived completely alone. Other nights, the sound of rope creaking, stretching under a body's weight, echoed through my room. One night, I woke at exactly 3:17 a.m. My phone lit up on its own, buzzing with a message from an unknown number. With trembling hands, I opened it. It was a photo. Harper. But not how I remembered him. His skin pale, his eyes blackened, a rope cutting into his neck as he pointed towards something behind me. My chest froze. I turned slowly, and there she was. The woman from Main Street. Standing in the dark corner of my room, her head tilted, neck bruised, eyes boring into mine. She didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched. I screamed and flicked on the light. The corner was empty. But my phone buzzed again. Another message. "Too late, Henry. You finally looked." The screen went black. Now, every night at the same time, I see them. Harper. The woman. Even Lena's twisted smile. Watching. Waiting. Their shadows linger in the mirror, in the window, in the gaps of every room. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel cold fingers brush my throat, tightening, pulling, reminding me of that morning. The morning I chose not to look fully. Maybe this was never just a haunting. Maybe it was always a curse. And now it's mine. Forever. If these stories kept you awake tonight, imagine what the next one will do. Subscribe to Midnight Confessions, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if this happened to you? Your nightmares are just beginning.